Hey y'all, we are back with another Poli-Side-Eye. It was only 2 weeks this time we were gone, right?
I mean, who's counting?
Update everyone on how you been. I mean, you're a guest on my channel.
I'm doing well. So I'm in the academic job market, as I told everyone the last time, which means that I am looking for some lovely department to hire me as an assistant professor in their political science department. So if y'all know somebody hiring, holla at your boy.
So the Met Gala just happened, and a lot of people are talking about AOC's dress. A lot of people usually try to do political statements at the Met Gala, so it's nothing new, I think. But the dress she had on, I mean, she looks good. And then on the back, it said, "Tax the rich" in bold red writing. At first glance, I was like, okay, that's pretty on brand for AOC, but a lot of people had a lot to say about it. Like, they were calling her like maybe a fraud, and some people were like defending her. I'm not sure people was canceling her, but people were just really critical of it. So
Yeah.
you had a lot of thoughts about it. So I'm curious.
So let me preface this by saying I don't believe in cancel culture, so I didn't cancel her. So I just want to put that on the table before people start trying to come for me. So I thought that it was less the dress that I found interesting and more so what she said. So they stopped and interviewed her, and she was with I think the designer of the dress. And, they were asking her what made her want to go to the Met Gala. And she gives this whole little thing about, as a working class Latina, it's important to be in spaces where we can break the fourth wall. I didn't really know what she meant by that. And essentially have this conversation about the spectacle that is the Met. So I just thought that was super fascinating because first off, I'm not exactly sure what conversation she would want it to have. I was trying to get the connection to, it's like she just threw out a whole bunch of words that sounded radical, but in no way what were. And so it's just like she threw out the working class thing. I'm just like, also we need to really think about whether or not she is working class. There is no clear definition about what that is, but a congressperson, I don't know if that quite qualifies, but I let that slide. But at the end of it, she's just like, we need to have this conversation. And I'm just kind of thinking like, what is the conversation that needs to be had? And how is this related to issues that actually affect working people in a material way? Like most people who have to work for a living, A, probably didn't even know the Met was going on. And B, like, how does this relate to their day-to-day lives? So it just felt like she was trying to make a situation important or bigger than what it actually was. And I just didn't really understand like what the purpose of trying to turn this into something that was more significant than it actually was. And so I had less of an issue with the dress than I did with, and it's not that I had an issue, I just thought what she said was interesting because it just goes to show how certain forms of politics, particularly when they're elite politics, standing for issues that are really not what most people care about. Like most people don't care about like who gets to go to the Met. This felt weird. It was a weird statement. The dress, I didn't really care that much. People were like, oh, it's performative. And I'm just kind of like, all of life is performative. To me, just saying, is it performative is kind of missing the point. It's just like, what is she performing? It's just like, is she performing? It's like she's trying to perform something that's radical, but it's not. In this case. And that's not to say that she hasn't taken positions that might be viewed as radical, but going to the Met and being who she is and just her presence is not itself radical. And so I just think that we need to reckon with that. I just thought that how she tried to justify her presence it just felt weird and tone deaf, honestly.
So you think it didn't give what she think it gave?
I don't know what she thinks it gave, honestly, because I wrote about this, and one thing that I think we need to reckon with is somebody's existence is not itself radical. Like just because you were once a working class person that is now at the Met, that's not in and of itself radical. So I saw her interview Monday and I was like, I have thoughts. But then I kind of like left it there, and I was like, let me think about what it is I want to say. And so I tweeted, believing that your presence in a given space is itself disruptive, radical, a form of resistance, etc. It's just indicative of how little recognition there is of how and where power is located, who wields it, and how it can actually be disrupted. And so someone asked me or replied to my tweet and just asked if what she did is neither disruptive, radical, nor a form of resistance, what would it be? And then I just kind of, was being somewhat flippant, but I was serious in saying that nothing she could have done would have been radical at the Met. Like, it's the Met. But anyway, the person then asked me, in your opinion, is there no valid type of resistance that an attendee of the Met could execute?
Huh.
And so I replied and said, I can't really answer that unless the actor specifies what it is that's being resisted. And so we like to throw out this term, and it's kind of become a buzzword, like it's resistance, we're resisting. And I'm just kind of like,
resistance.
Right, just the hashtag. And I'm just like, resistance is an action. It's not a state. If you're going to use the term resistance, you have to specify who or what is being resisted. Like, if we don't know that, what is she resisting? Like, you can't just say I'm resisting capitalism. Like, capitalism ultimately is an abstraction. So you have to resist something tangible, a thing, a person, an entity. And if you don't specify what that is, like, what is it other than just a statement? I just didn't get what it is she was supposed to be resisting. And that's never been articulated to me. So I don't know what else to make of it.
So what I thought was, when I saw it, I was like, oh, I mean, she's just trying to play on the irony of, you're going to this fancy, Met Gala where there's like tons of rich people, and you have a dress that says tax the rich, in front of all these rich people.
On one hand, we do live in an environment, and I have a huge issue with this, but this is a product of where we are politically, but we are drawn to spectacle. There's a lot of issues with that. I've spoken at length about how I think it's very problematic about how we turn political figures into celebrity. Just one of my big issues with Obama is that so much of Obama and his being was about who he was. And so I later tweeted, after I tweeted my first thread about AOC and the Met Gala, that politics as a form of who someone is, as opposed to what someone does, is destined, it's a dead end. Like, politics isn't about who we are. Like, that's not what politics should be about. Politics is about what people and what we do. And that's what we should be focused on. But too often we can't get to the what people are doing because we're so fixated on who someone is. And so people will push back against a critique against AOC and say, well, her heart was in the right place. Like, she had good intentions. I'm like, first off, you have no way of knowing what somebody's intentions are. It's all speculative. But even if you did know what someone's intention was, it doesn't matter, because that's not what we are assessing a political figure based on. We're assessing her based on what she does. And so from that standpoint, I think it's a fair question to ask what it is that she was doing at the Met Gala, which she never said. She just gave this vague language about resisting and disrupting and all of these other vague terms that sound cute and sound radical, but really are divorced from any type of like material or substantive politics. And so I just think that part of what we're seeing is that I think some people are recognizing that politics in many ways has become a spectacle, similar to what the Met Gala is, which the Met Gala is just a spectacle. That's what it is. But I think a lot of people are uncomfortable with that, and rightfully so, but just don't know how to articulate that critique. So it often comes off in a way that feels a bit half-baked. And so I just think we just need to be more honest about what politics is. And I just believe, like, as long as politics is about who somebody is and not what we do or what people do, then I think we're going to probably be in this like hamster wheel of never having any real substantive conversations.
That sounds very bleak, like a hamster wheel analogy.
We just have to be honest about where it is. Again, part of the reason we have this show is so we can be honest about where we are politically, so we can think critically about where we might go. But if we just keep pretending, or if you don't feel like you can critique somebody, I've seen so many people be like, let her enjoy her life. I'm like, she is a political figure. Like, part of her existence is to be critiqued. Like, that is what she is.
I feel that way about Chloe Bailey. I know this is a whole different topic musically, but I feel the same way with Chloe.
As you do about AOC?
No, I'm just saying about the whole thing on critique. That's all. Like, it just seems like some people are just like, they cannot critique this person.
Well, I think part of that, again, like so much, and it's not just politics, but we live in an era where, again, we're less concerned about what people do and who and focus more so on who they are. And so when that happens, anything that you say about what somebody is doing is construed as bashing them, because again, it's such an identitarian kind of framework. And I'm like, I don't know anything about AOC. I don't know what she does. I don't know what she likes. Like, I don't know literally nothing about her aside from what is constructed in the media, which obviously is a performance. So all I can assess is what she does. And when she does silly shit like says that she's breaking the fourth wall of the Met, which makes no fucking sense, all I can do is critique that. I don't know her intent. The only person that knows what AOC's intents are AOC. And so I can't assess that. And so going back to your point about like Chloe Bailey, I mean, it's weird that we're like connecting that to this, but I think there is a larger story there about, because even when it comes to like music or any type of, I guess, public figure, I think we need to figure out a way to be able to divorce. And I guess it kind of gets into this situation where, because you get the similar situation with like Kanye and Bill Cosby, like, oh, like separate the person from the art. And I do think that there is something to that, but you also can use some discretion in thinking about like when you want to assess the types of things they do and ostensibly the type of character they have. I mean, again, we don't know these people, but so I do think it can get a little slippery, but generally I try to assess people based on what they do and not who they are, or based on who I think they are. Again, it's all based on the presentation they give themselves. Like, we don't know these people, but we can only go based on how they're being constructed in the media.
So there's one tweet that stood out to me on the AOC drama. This is from Representative Alma Hernandez. I'm not sure if she is a Republican or a Democrat. The tweet says, just a thought, if you are privileged enough to be at the Met Gala, you most definitely are a part of the rich. So if you actually wanted to protest it and not be a hypocrite, you should have stood outside and protested it with a sign rather than go and enjoy it. I can see some points in that.
Sure. I mean, I was kind of indifferent to that tweet because my whole thing is like, what is being protested? Like, are you just protesting rich people being rich? Like,
Well, taxing the rich.
I just didn't get the connection to the Met. Like, why would people be protesting the Met?
I don't think she was protesting the Met, but I think she was just using the platform that the Met gives people.
Rich people are going to be rich. We've talked about this before. So I'm not protesting shit like the Met or just like this extreme showcasing of money and wealth and power. That's what rich people do. Like, even when I don't know if we talked about like when Beyonce and Jay-Z people were talking about that photo shoot they did.
Oh, yeah.
Love Diamond or whatever. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so tone deaf. And I'm just like, that is what rich people do. Rich people are rich and they act rich because they are rich. I tweeted about this before. I think part of the reason people get upset about stuff like this is because we really don't know where else to be upset, because we know that ultimately we don't have the power to be upset at people who actually have power. So we get upset at shit like the Met. And that's not to say that I don't care whether or not who's at the Met. Like, I've never been interested in the Met. I don't care about what people wear. I'm just generally not drawn to that type of spectacle. But
I care a little bit, but you know.
And that's fine. I'm not disparaging somebody who cares about the Met. Like, it's just not my thing. But even with like award shows, like the red carpet has always been my least favorite part of an award show. I just don't see what about the Met, what conversation do we need to be having? Like, it just feels like a waste of conversation. Like, I don't, what change is going to come out when they want to diversify the Met? Like,
I think take the Met out of it. I think it's just the stage and the platform, whether it be like the Super Bowl, the Grammys, like any type of red carpet, VMAs, you know a lot of eyeballs are going to be on this. So some people think that it's their time to make a stance on something. Like, say if I want to wear like Black Lives Matter shirt, like, or the jerseys that the basketball players wore, like, like take the Met completely out of it. It doesn't even matter. It's just, I think, the eyeballs that the Met brings, and she just wanted a statement that she believed in.
Okay, but making a statement, who are you making the statement to? There's a lot of questions that I have. Who is the intended audience of that statement? Like, It seems to me like most of the people who care about the Met, because I mean, let's be honest about it, it's a very class skewed event. Most people who care about the Met are probably solidly middle class or wealthier. So my hunch would be most of the people who watch the Met already have similar ideological positions as AOC as it is. So who is she conveying this to? In a lot of ways, it lends itself to a reaction from the other side, because I'm sure they've been airing that on Fox News for the past 2 days.
Yeah.
And contributing to that echo chamber that we have to then contend with. So again, like, it's not just, people say she's making a statement. Again, statements aren't just a thing. Like, statements, you have to think about who the intended audience is. What are you trying to convey? Like, what is the tactic supposed to be accomplishing? It's just like a tactic in and of itself doesn't do anything. Like, a tactic has to be a part of a larger strategic kind of position. And like, if I don't know what that is, like, I don't really know what the point was. Mm-hmm. So I think that's when people come in and say it's just performative, because it's not tethered to any type of like material program. It's not like she's doing this because she just introduced a bill that she wants to bring attention to. Okay, if that was the case, maybe that was a little bit different. None of that was true. So I just don't get what she was trying to accomplish. And the fact that she tried to paper over that with this radical language of like, again, I keep coming back to this break the fourth wall thing because it was just the stupidest thing ever. I just don't get what she was trying to go with it. I'm not mad at her. Like, first off, she's not my congressperson, so I don't give a shit what she votes. I mean, I don't care. But even if she were, she went to the Met Gala, and someone summed it up really well. They were just like, she just wants to go and hobnob with rich people. Like, it is what it is. And that's kind of just how I feel about it. But the fact that she tries to make it seem like her presence is somehow in itself radical is foolish.
I get what you're saying.
I just think that we need to be honest about the fact it's not radical. And that's okay. I'm not saying everything has to be, but let's stop posing as though it is. I think it makes people feel good. And I have an issue with politics being so emotionally laden. Like, I don't give a shit about how people feel. Like, what is the material change that's coming out of this? And I don't know. Maybe that's too cynical of a approach to it.
Our cynicism rivals each other, I swear.
I try that because I'm a pretty hopeful person.
I
am pretty hopeful. Optimistic, questionable, but hopeful, I am.
Okay. Well, we would also love to hear y'all thoughts in the comments as well. Speaking of the Met Gala, Nicki Minaj made a moment about her again. I thought it was more so attention-seeking, but first it started out as, I'm not going. And then, her barbs, who are, vastly uneducated, they wanted to know more. No offense to people who like Nicki Minaj. I'm just saying the hardcore barb stands.
You'd say something offensive about Nicki Minaj stands, and then you tell them no offense.
Right. Then it started out with, I don't want my baby around COVID. I don't want to get something about COVID. Then she was talking about the vaccine, and then she was talking about the vaccination requirements that the Met had, and that was the reason why she didn't go. And I'm just like, oh Lord, I see where she's going with this. And then I think she said, like, in that statement, she didn't want to take the vaccine yet, or she needed to do her research. But then followed by that, she talked about her cousin's friend's wedding. And he took the vaccine and his balls swole up. And then his fiance didn't want to marry him anymore. I cannot lie about this. She said that. And the only reason that I had a problem with this was, fine, you can say I'm still thinking about it, but then you're saying false shit. Stuff that you heard from not your cousin, but your cousin's friend in Trinidad. I think she deserved to be dragged. And then some people were like, oh, she's just asking a question. You can't be bullying her. It's not even like that. That's why I was just like, I didn't have a problem with what Joy Reid said, but then Joy Reid said something along the lines of she was just disappointed. She was like, sister, I'm a fan, and what you're doing is just dangerous. You have 22 million followers. You're very influential. Like, I'm just disappointed in you. I don't think she said anything else to that, but then Nicki Minaj.
Well, her Uncle Tom.
Right, called her Tomiana, Uncle Tomiana.
That was funny, I have to admit.
It was kind of funny. It was funny. But I just thought it was just uncalled for the way she was coming at her. Then she called her homophobic, which really the whole thing was just a distraction because of her predator husband. and what he's going through right now. I think that was just a big deflection, an attention-seeking moment. I don't even think it was about the vaccine. But that's all I had to say on that. I just wanted to know more so about the Joy Reid versus Nicki Minaj aspect. Was Joy Reid too hard on her? Or do you think like someone that's, because you know celebrity is so important in the United States. Just today, I just saw this. The Trinidad and Tobago health minister responds to the swollen testicle claim made by Nicki Minaj. That's where she's from. And they had to go out and try to find the person. They said this was just a lie. So yeah, like this is influential. Like the way it's like on news now. You have Candace Owens speaking on her too. Anyway, what do you think about it?
So Joy Reid annoys the shit out of me. So let me just put that out there. So I can't
like Joy Reid. Oh my
I know
God.
you do. I know you do. A lot of people do, but she annoys the shit out of me. Now, so I have a somewhat hot take about this because I'm generally anti-censorship. So I think that people should be able to say what they want, even if what she was saying was a lie. Now, the reason I'm anti that censorship is because I think censorship lends itself to the type of reactionary politics that we should be trying to avoid. That being said, yes, I realize she has a platform, although I hate that terminology because that's part of the issue. Like the fact that we look to figures to make sense of everything is rather than giving people the tools to think critically and like actually have a open discourse about things and have hard conversations. We just rather just have figures and have people have platforms. And again, it's just more so my issue with the whole idea of celebrity and spectacle and all of that, which I've railed about at length. So I didn't think what Joy said, as much as she annoys the shit out of me, I didn't think what she said was overly critical. I don't know why she felt the need to say that on her show. Like, there's a lot of other important shit going on in the world, and she feels the need to spend the end of the show like doing a diatribe against Nicki Minaj. But you know, she did it because she's not stupid. She knew it was gonna find its way in social media and get likes and clicks, and that's how she's probably gonna get her next promotion. So I get all that. She had a functional reason for doing it. But that being said, like, so I saw some people saying, oh, well, you know, Nicki Minaj has 22, you know, Joy said she has 22 million followers and she's spreading this misinformation about the vaccine and blah, 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 blah. Now, my whole thing about the misinformation thing is that I think that we give too much to the misinformation thing. Yes, there is a lot of misinformation that's going on politically about COVID and a ton of other things, but people being susceptible to misinformation is a symptom of a larger societal issue. That's not why people are anti-vaccines. People are anti-vaccines for other reasons. I mean, there's just a general distrust collectively in our society for somewhat justified reasons, but a lot of that is historically produced. So we have a deeply skeptical society, skeptical of each other, of the government, of the news, of just everything, every damn thing. I mean, you turn on the 5 o'clock news and everything is about somebody getting shot or stabbed or carjacking. And so everybody is on edge. I say we're such an anxious country. So you have all of that. And then you have this vaccine that I think when the Johnson & Johnson thing happened, that kind of was the final nail in the coffin for a lot of people. So I don't know, I just feel like the misinformation thing often ends up being a red herring. And it doesn't allow us to talk about like other reasons why people might be skeptical about taking the vaccine beyond just because they're just hearing false things about it. Do I think Nicki Minaj could have avoided saying those things, especially if she knew they were alive? Absolutely. Do I think she had a responsibility to? Debatable. Do I think she should be canceled? Absolutely not, because I think cancel culture is deeply troubling. Do I think what she said to Joy Reid was hilarious? Fuck yes. So that's pretty much my thoughts on that situation.
Fair enough. I want to get to the next topic. I don't want to like take too much of your time. Are you surprised about the California results to keep Governor Newsom?
A little bit. I'm not surprised that it failed, but I was surprised that it failed as strongly as it did. The last numbers, they're still tabulating the votes, but the last numbers I saw had him, the no vote was like 62% or something like that. Oh, wow. So that was a little surprising because even polls like a few weeks ago had it pretty much in statistical dead heat. So I was thinking it was going to be a no vote, but closer to the more like 52-48. So the fact that that the recall was rejected so overwhelmingly was a good sign. I mean, California has this reputation for being like this progressive bastion, which is funny to me because California has historically been one of the most reactionary states in the country. So, I mean, California gave us Ronald Reagan. California gave us Richard Nixon. California gave us the tax revolt. That was kind of the precursor to the Tea Party. I mean, so California has been kind of the hotbed for some of this reactionary conservative politics, especially over the last half century. So the fact that it has this reputation of just being so leftist is kind of ahistorical. But it is good to see that they didn't fall for this fool, because I mean, Larry Elder he's stupid. Like you just listen to him talk, like the man is just an idiot. So, I mean, if they were gonna be reactionary, at least consider somebody that wasn't a dimwit. But so.
Well, you already jumped the gun on my question after that. I was gonna say, is California as liberal as people think it is? Because I don't think it is. Because people are like, oh, San Francisco, LA, they're so progressive. We've been legal in California. People just have this ideology that it's some like type of liberal utopia in California.
I mean, people can say that because we don't generally discuss class in this country. So on one dimension, I mean, the reason that California has that reputation is because we live in a society where we just generally don't discuss class, period. So everything is about social relations in a very social discussion. So on one dimension, I mean, California is pretty liberal. I mean, obviously, like you said, marijuana being legalized, and in San Francisco having yeah, exactly. But also remember, Prop 8 passed in California too. So things are often more gray than people realize when it comes to California. Again, California was led the charge so in the late 60s, early 70s, they had what was called a tax revolt. And so a lot of middle-class people, particularly in suburbs, retaliated against property taxation that was ostensibly going to be used for funding public education and other services. And that started there and kind of spread across the country. And so again, that in a lot of ways was the precursor to what became the Tea Party movement later on in the around 2010 or so. So again, California has this reputation of being this bastion of liberalism, but you can really only say that if you don't consider the economic components. So there has been some radical Black politics in California. The Black Panthers had a strong presence around Oakland, in and around Oakland. So that was a big thing. But I don't think California is as exceptional as people want to make it out to be. And I think part of the reason that people can have that conception of California is because we don't talk about the fact that California also has some of the deepest income inequalities, the largest homeless population in the country, and all kind of other political economic issues that just don't get discussed, mainly because we live in a society where we take capitalism for granted. We don't talk about class. And so when we only talk about the more surface level social issues, then it can have this reputation of being liberal. But if you consider these other economic dimensions, it kind of fails the test. And again, we also have all of this history of California being, again, this hotbed for conservatism vis-a-vis Reagan and Nixon and so forth. So California is a lot more complicated and complex than people tend to realize. If you just look at the presidential results, like California voted for Nixon, they voted for Gerald Ford, they voted for Reagan, I believe, both times, as did the rest of the country, with the exception of 2 states. So again, California is not this outlier, but we just think that all of California is just this utopia, and that's just not true.
It's mostly because of the weather, probably.
Yeah, it's the weather, and But
I wanted to know, why did this election cost so much? They said it almost cost $300 million of taxpayers' money.
Yeah, I mean, well, elections are ridiculously expensive anyway. Yeah, I'm we spend. I mean, I don't have an estimate off the top of my head, but I would venture to think we probably spend billions with a B during presidential election years. Think about the presidential election and all the Senate races and all the House races and the gubernatorial elections we don't want to call it that, but it really is a business. You have to pay for consultants, You have to pay for polling. We've talked about this before. Polling is ridiculously expensive, especially if you want it to be scientifically weighted and all of these other things. If you're conducting polls repeatedly, that's going to cost you. You have to pay people to conduct the polls. You have to pay people to go and knock on doors. You have to commercials. You have to pay for that. That's airtime is extremely expensive, especially in markets like LA and San Francisco and San Diego. So think of, you're paying for the commercials, which are expensive, the surveys and the polls, which are expensive. You're paying for people to go out and do the actual knocking on doors, which is expensive. You actually have to. So there's a whole like campaign industry, if you will, because everything in America is going to be commodified. So you have to pay for people to do all of these things. You got to pay your staff. You got to pay. I mean, so think all of that adds up. And so in a state like California, remember, there's more people in California than there is in the entire country of Canada. So it's going to be expensive. So I think when you just stop and think about all that goes into campaigning, especially because on the right, many of these organizations and these institutions that fund a lot of these campaigns, pretty much like a bottomless pit of money, like Coke type system. So these people are billionaires, and for them, like $300 million, like, I'll get that back next year. The stock market's doing well, like no biggie. So yeah.
There goes that bleak feeling again. So if people voted yes, then what would have happened? He would have been out of office, right?
So if they would have, it's a super weird super weird process. So if they would have voted yes, then the person who got the most votes. So the way it works is that you get your ballot and it says, do you want to recall the governor? Yes or no? Yeah. If you say yes, then it goes to who would you want to replace the governor with? And then you get a list of candidates. And then the candidate that gets the most votes, it doesn't even have to be a plurality or majority or none of that. It's just the person who gets the most votes would have replaced Newsom. So that's the way that it works.
So Caitlyn Jenner could have.
If Caitlyn Jenner would have been the top vote getter out of the people that were vying to replace him, then she would have been the next governor. I mean, that's how Arnold Schwarzenegger became governor. Like I don't think he got that large of a vote, but the recall passed and he was just the person who got the most votes. It's really interesting. On one hand, I can see how a recall would be appealing, but on the other hand, it's often very deeply undemocratic because of the amount of money that goes into it. And we know that people wouldn't be spending this type of money if they didn't think that they were going to get results. So,
Well, we've come to the time of the book recommendation. Do you have one?
I do, actually. I'm super excited. I thought very long about this because I think it relates really well to what we've been talking about today about like what politics is and what it isn't. So there's this really good book called Class Notes. The subheader is Posing as Politics and Other Thoughts on the American Scene. It's by a Black scholar. His name is Adolph Reid Jr. He is one of my absolute favorite scholars. He has been a critic of the type of politics that we've been talking about today that's premised on like spectacle and politics as celebrity. He's been ardent about his critique of Barack Obama for like 20 years now. And so a lot of people, kind of side-eye him because, it's like you can't critique Barack Obama, especially when it comes to the Black community. So he's been very steadfast in his critique. And so I think people really like this book. It's actually a collection of essays. So you don't have to read it all in one sitting because each chapter is like its own standalone essay. And so it's really good. It's actually really funny. And he makes some really good points. And there's a lot of thought-provoking passages in there about like, what do we consider politics and why do we consider shit like putting tax the rich on a dress at a spectacle to be a form of politics. So yeah, Class Notes. Get it. It's really good.
The book recommendation will be in the description below, and I'll have a link for it if anyone's interested in buying it. So yeah, that was our show for today. You can follow me, CDIGGI1. Jared, where can they follow you if they have any questions for you?
Yeah, as long as people aren't going to try to attack me or drag me. But it's JC Tiger Fan, JAYC Tiger Fan. Twitter and Instagram.
So yeah, we'll see y'all soon for some more political hijinks. Bye.